matter with you?
You cut it a little close, but it's okay.
Okay, so at 6:30, I'm going to call the April 1st, 2025 Pembroke School Committee meeting to order. Would you all join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. No one had signed up for public comment. I know, Paige, you were a couple seconds after I called the meeting to order. Anything you wanted to say? Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you all for coming to join us. Tonight is actually a big night. We're going to have the admin recommended budget. So this is sort of the, almost, I guess, the penultimate meeting before we get to our final meeting, in which the superintendent is going to give us her recommendations for the fiscal 26 budget. Do you have any adjustments to the agenda?
Nope.
Under communication, there is an item, joint letter to, should that be DESE?
No, it's Bureau of Education.
Do you want to take that?
Sure. So when we met last week and talked about our options associated with joining vocational schools, obviously Tom Hickey joined us from South Shore Tech, and he talked a little bit about the conversation that's floating out there around changing the admissions to a lottery system. Obviously, he gave us the contact information if we wanted to go on, because those regulations are out for public comment right now. But I think there was some conversation on the school committee listservs about sending a letter to the Bureau of Education.
Sorry, folks.
That's okay. Strongly opposing the lottery. So Allison actually drafted the letter that's in your packet, just saying that implementing the lottery is not beneficial to students.
So, have you all had a chance to read the letter?
Mm-hmm.
Any comments or objections?
I think the only thing I was thinking about was just adding the attendance piece. I know that attendance was one of the things that Tom Hickey had brought up. Maybe calling it out as that's one of the concerns potentially, but that was the only piece. But we don't necessarily have to include that.
So that would go in the third paragraph where it talks about student achievement. Right, you're saying that attendance should play a part in admissions?
Yes, because I think what the idea, the way I understood it was that right now attendance is looked at, but with the lottery system it wouldn't be looked at, I believe.
Yeah, so right now they look at your grades, attendance, your discipline record if you have any. Obviously all of that would just be pure lottery.
Yeah.
So I guess, just to throw out for discussion to make sure, if we include that but we don't include the other factors, does that make sense? And the fact that we're sort of saying, hey, that it actually says, therefore we strongly urge you to reject this proposal and preserve a fair merit-based admissions process that upholds student achievement and ensures school autonomy. Sort of envelopes everything in there with merit.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would
Call it out
I would
specifically.
call it out specifically. I think it's just going
That's
to
fine.
add confusion.
Okay, I think that makes sense. Yeah, and if folks want more information, they know where to find it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I apologize, I was not here for the meeting. With the lottery, we'd still be guaranteed the same number of seats? Would that make sense? And that
It's
would be
it's who would ultimately be able to get the seats.
Yes, so they,
from our town, though.
correct.
I
So-
believe they grant you so many seats.
correct, it
based
still
on
would be the
state
percentage,
population.
but this basically makes it just pure luck on how you get in. So right now, they have this whole system of, the students who, are interested and they might,
Right, there's an application, there's an
Yeah.
interview,
Yeah.
there's all
there's
kinds of that. This
steps
would just
to
be.
kind of rank the students. One of the things when I went and toured it that they mentioned is, some of these kids are going to have like major power tools and like blow torches. You don't want to necessarily put that in anybody's hands, so they
Right.
check to make sure that students are ready for
Yeah.
what's coming. So this changes that a lot. So I'd like to see us send it, because I think us sending it individually is one thing, but sending it as a school committee, especially one who's not directly affected by it yet, kind of shows that this is
I agree.
problem.
I agree, Allison. And I actually think the other thing, David, is think of it this way. it goes from your merit and your work and your dedication and what you're putting in
Yep.
to a game of chance.
Oh, yeah.
That's
no.
literally the differential. I actually don't even understand why you would discourage the work
Yeah.
in the merit-based system, but that does seem to be sort of the direction.
Yeah, I think I was listening to a BSC meeting when they were discussing this, and I think some of it comes down to there can be various reasons why students might have attendance issues or might have lower grades, and I think one of the arguments, not that I'm saying that we go this way, is about like equity and making sure that you have access. All students have access, no matter if they might not be an A student or a B student. But I think some of that comes down to the fact that there are not enough vocational education spots, right? And so I think we have to. My idea would be to come at it a different way, other than this lottery. But that's beyond this conversation tonight. So.
Sure, and my understanding is that during the interview, it's an opportunity for kids to talk about
Yeah.
places where their
Right.
portfolio might
Yep.
be lacking, right? Whether it's
Exactly.
attendance or just-
Yeah. Ultimately, I think this is I'm okay with this letter. I'm just mentioning the other side of the aisle, if you will, of what I've heard from other folks.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'd like to see us sign this and send it.
So why don't we do this? Can I get a motion to accept the letter to the Board of Education, or to the Board of Education?
Elementary
And secondary education, sorry, as presented, and approve the signing and distribution of said letter.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katrina, seconded by David. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous that way, so we'll sign it when it gets on letterhead and whatever. Bills are being distributed and approved for processing. We did have meeting minutes from March 25th. Can I get a motion to accept the school committee meeting minutes of March 25th as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katrina, seconded by Allison. Is there any discussion or adjustments? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous, Natalie. And the superintendent's report.
Sure. The first thing under my report is consideration for conditional approval of PHS overnight out-of-state field trip to Ireland in 2026. Similar to how we've done this in the past, Amanda Morocco in our English department is seeking your approval so that she can hold an interest meeting with students to make sure that there's interest for the trip. And then once that piece is completed and the trip gets closer, we come back with the actual details of the number of kids and what it comes out to be for cost.
So can I get a motion to accept the PHS overnight out-of-state field trip to Ireland in 2026 on a conceptual basis as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Allison,
Second.
seconded by Katrina.
I just
Questions?
have one question about, so I know we have international trips, but I know there's also just things happening at the border, and I just wonder, like, when we are looking at trips, are we taking that into consideration, the changing nature of like what might be required and things like that? Just wondering about that for international trips for our students and staff. Just because.
So yes, there have been times in the past where we've had approved trips but then canceled because there has
Okay.
been unrest in certain
Yeah.
areas of the world. It's something we would continue to keep an eye on
Okay.
as it gets closer and
Awesome.
make sure that there's not further action that you all would want to take.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Who's offering the tour? I mean, this thing.
Explorica.
Oh, okay. That's not the people we had the issues with. Is it? I just, that's like a thorn in my paw. I'm sorry.
Different company.
You have to vote. You didn't
Yeah,
wait.
I know. Are there any other questions?
No.
So there is a motion on the table to approve the PHS overnight out-of-state field trip for Ireland 2026 on a conceptual basis as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous, Natalie. Oh, my
Next up
favorite
in
thing.
her report is the discussion of FY26 fees. Those that know me know that I lovingly refer to this evening as Groundhog Day. I present, I think, the same 8 slides, and I present the same 8 slides for the past 15 years. And
The
sometimes-
numbers have changed.
Barely,
Be
like
clear.
$15 maybe, but I'm going to start with the transportation fee. So we obviously charge a transportation fee here in Pembroke for secondary families only. Here on the chart, you can see what we charge in relation to what neighboring communities charge. Budget Subcommittee met last Monday, and Sue, who's not here tonight, did voice an interest in us potentially putting on the chart one or two of our DART schools. So Canton and Wakefield are two DART schools that we've had, so not necessarily near us geographically, but like us socioeconomically according to the factors that DESE uses. So our current transportation fee is $255 for an individual, $355 for a family cap. The Budget Subcommittee is recommending increasing the individual to $300 and increasing the family cap to $500. You see at the bottom there that that increase generates about $28,465 in additional dollars in budget.
So just to give you guys a little bit of color as you kind of think through this, when we met at Budget Sub, we had a lot of discussion around candidly every one of these fees. I've always had trouble with fees, right? And at the beginning of the school year, we hit families with a really high number, right? Because you could potentially have an athletic fee, you could have a transportation fee, you could have a club fee, you could have a parking fee. These things really add up, especially if you have 2 or 3 kids. I mean, it could be $1,500 for a family, and that's a lot of money, right? So I don't think any of this is taken lightly. I candidly always didn't like fees also because you couldn't deduct them on your taxes, but now with the SALT cap, can't deduct it anyway, so that kind of went out the window. When we looked at this though, this was one of the fees that we were grossly under almost every community we looked at, right? Our family cap was way below anything else, and quite honestly, both transportation or when we have a conversation with athletics and when we have a conversation about the clubs, these things, as we all know, are getting way more expensive. And we've subsidized them pretty well over the years. We've kept our fee structures low. Even this, candidly, when you look at the comparatives, the individual is right in line, but the family cap is still quite low and lower than what most of the comparative school districts are. So you can hit the family cap really with 2 kids, and you basically end up getting about a 30% discount on the second child. So we did do our best to be as equitable and fair about this as we can and as we possibly could. The other thing that I want to point out, because this is really important, if a family is unable to pay, we find a way through. No family is denied the ability to have an athlete participate, have their kid in a club, get bused, anything else if they have an inability to pay. Super proud of that. That is something that we have held very firm for and that we take very seriously. So that ability is there. So I just wanted you guys to all understand that as we enter into this.
We know the information offhand is as we raise fees, do we lose riders? And do we lose athletes? I don't know, I'm just asking the question.
No, so I've shared with you all pretty regularly the athletic participation numbers that those have increased in the wave of fees. In our bus fleets, we're running the same number of buses that we've always run with a declining enrollment, so the number of kids riding is still pretty steady.
Okay, good. That's my only concern.
No, it's fair though. If there's a bigger churn, and it's
Yeah, if
eating
you
into
raise the fee and lose more
right.
bodies, what's the sense of raising the fees?
Yeah, this makes sense. One question I had just around, on average, how many families usually ask for support with that fee? If there's like a number or
Sure,
percentage?
so transportation is a little bit different than athletics. So if you qualify for, historically, if you qualified for free and reduced lunch, I appreciate that lunch is free for everybody now, but if you receive SNAP benefits or any assistance from the government, you automatically get free transportation. We get a list of kids. In addition to that, we probably hear from maybe a dozen families a year that are either looking for a payment plan, which obviously we're willing to accommodate too, because to your point, Patrick, it is a big amount at the beginning of the school year, but they're, if they could pay $50 a month, they're willing to do that. And there's maybe 4 or 5 families that write a letter for a hardship waiver, and that's always
Okay, perfect.
Granted.
an easy thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just sometimes families are kind of in the middle where they might not qualify for SNAP benefits,
Yeah.
but still be struggling
They
financially.
can still ask though. And,
Yeah.
and I want to make that point, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be on government assistance to
Correct.
ask for help. It is
Yeah.
fine to ask for help.
Mhm, thank you, yeah.
So I do think this is a large jump. I think it's warranted, but I do think going from 355 to 500 is a pretty substantial jump, and I think this is probably like the third year I've asked about this, but I would really like to see like a family cap for all fees, like a one-time use
So
that covers
we talk-
sports and like, fees.
We talked about it. We did talk about it. The number, I think the number would end up being a little high, would be quite high, actually. It's hard being sort of the first one out there, but it is something to consider and to think through. You know, maybe you have a cap, but then you also have a total cap, to your point.
Yeah.
So you could have all the individual caps, because you don't know how it's going to run, and then still have a $2,000 cap type of thing. Yeah, the math, you can figure out the math.
Yeah,
pretty
because
well.
at one point back, like with our current, I was looking at like $1,000, give or take, but that was even low, because, the family cap for sports and transportation was well below that. Now, it would be still sort of in line, $550 and,
You're looking at probably closer to
$500.
$1,200.
Yeah, because if you include,
Parking or.
yeah, exactly, like extracurricular, and I don't know if any of the elementary clubs ever I don't know what.
We're gonna talk about that in a little bit, but you'd also have to tier it in a way that preschool tuition would be outside of that cap. Like,
Yeah.
There's a couple of.
Yeah,
other
I would
things
I
on
would
top like
consider
that.
these like fees, not tuition style. But I think we should highly consider an overall family cap. It's like just, going from 355 to 500, and that's just the start with slide 1.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand the need for the revenue increase, but I just think that's a lot in 1 year to go up that much.
Yeah, one
But-
thing I was going to say, sorry,
Sorry.
it was, I think we need to be increasing in smaller increments more often versus doing it in a big amount, but that's just a lesson for potentially another year, because I think we've wanted to keep things low, but also it seems like a large gap, even though we've been behind in terms of what other towns are doing, and it's still in alignment with other towns in terms of it's not too much, but it's just a jump for us.
And I don't know, we haven't gotten to the overall budget, but like, is this critical to closing gaps?
Yep, so $55,000 of the amount when you looked at, when you looked at sort of the breakdown of the 40 million and change that the total budget's coming to, and then how that breakdown happens, $55,000 is attributed to what we have here. Whatever we don't vote for, that would have to be made up in a couple other places. Yeah, what it would mean is that there are certain things that we're actually talking about investing. We're actually investing this year,
Yeah.
right? Back into the district and into services for kids that we would have to reconsider.
I agree with this jump. I think it's just a matter of what we need to do.
I also think if you look, right, at each of the towns, any of the towns surrounding us,
Yep.
we are still, on the family cap, the only town that, and they're within $15 is Situate. On a family cap, I would say we're locked in the middle on the individual.
But we also have neighbors that somehow don't charge anything. Hingham, Marshfield, Carver.
Well, not Marshfield doesn't charge anything, but Hingham had something.
Hingham has a proposal out there. They're currently not charging anything, but they're looking to charge for secondary transportation.
So we have to consider that too, like that there are some that don't charge for buses at
Don't
all.
charge or don't offer, right? So
Don't you have to?
What?
Not at the secondary
They're not at
level.
the secondary level.
So is there not buses then for in
I don't-
Marshfield, Carver, and Hingham?
There is
In
in Marshfield and in
Marshfield,
Hingham.
yeah.
I don't know if there is in Carver. I don't know that.
Because Carver would be going to Silver Lake. So that's
No,
probably.
Carver is not Silver
Oh, they're
Lake.
not Silver
A
Lake.
little creative math game here, just for fun. If we look at the single individual, it's a $45 jump. If we look at the family cap, it's a $145 jump. What if we do the $50 early discount? Theoretically, if somebody paid, that would almost take away the $45.
Well, you do have a $30 early discount.
Right, but I'm saying make it
That you
50.
can, so I wouldn't.
You
I
would
mean,
lose more money that way because the bulk of
because
people
you-
take advantage of the early discount.
Right, then, because, well, the number's gonna come down, one, but there is also a point that I can't stress enough, this fee makes up a minuscule component of the overall transportation amount. The total transportation cost is
It's
how much?
For regular ed transportation, it's like $1.5 million. We take in about $100,000 in fees.
Yeah.
So that's one reason. And honestly, I do think there's a point that we gotta eventually bite the bullet and catch up, or we're always gonna be
Right.
kind of catching up. I mean, you guys can do whatever you want
Are
to
we
do,
voting on this
right? I
tonight,
mean,
or is
we
this just
can-
discussion?
We're voting on it. Or the plan was to vote on it.
Yeah, I'm okay to vote on it, but that is me.
Yeah, I personally think going up to 500, I mean, I get it, we need it. I feel like it's, without an overall family cap of everything, I just feel that we're jumping too much too fast.
Well, that's why I said if you took the discount a little more, which Patrick says, I'm just playing devil's
Yeah,
advocate.
no, I
for a
get it.
second.
I totally get
If you
it.
say to somebody, you know, how many people take advantage of your early discount, I don't know, is it 50%, 80%, 10%?
A decent chunk of people do. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt they do. So the $20 on the total family cap, I have no, do you have any idea roughly? So about
So
$6,000,
there's 97
$7,000.
families that are in the family cap, so it would be $2,000.
So the amount of money, so then it's optics. What you're actually doing isn't gonna have a huge effect on the number of people already, it's just optics.
Yeah.
I have a question. Any administrators have any feedback on fees at all?
So the transportation fee in particular doesn't run at all through the buildings.
It doesn't? Okay,
Board.
never
It comes
mind.
to have a
Just seeing if we have a second
transportation
opinion.
coordinator. And I think to your point, if you look at other communities, not just for the transportation fee, but for other fees, the family cap structure is generally mirrored after 2 kids and then it's free, right? So we are so far off on what our family cap is because it's like 1 1/3 kid. I think that's where we need to do the most making up, is getting the family caps to align with what the concept of a family cap is.
Yeah.
Again, these 2 increases generate $29,000. That's, half of a teacher or a paraprofessional, or it's a real number.
I also think, to your point about if families need a hardship waiver, that is available. So I think ultimately we need to make up the large gap in fees that are there.
I mean, you could put it, I mean, if you just add everything up, right, and you assume somebody's in 2 co-curriculars, if you had a $1,200 cap, you're in essence going to hit it
Yeah.
anyway. Like, the number's still going to be the same thing. The only difference is the caps are at the individual level, right? Because if you don't have an athlete, that's a big family cap that you're not going to hit. You're never going to hit the
Right.
total family cap anyway. If you don't have somebody that's doing a whole lot of co-curricular, I mean, you could have somebody that's simply parking, right? You would, in order to hit, no matter what the family cap is that you would set, you would have to have multiple kids
kids
in
riding the bus,
transportation, 2 kids playing sports. Then you would have to have a couple of kids doing extracurriculars outside of that, and 1 or 2 parking passes, right? So in a weird way you do, it's just all in different components. It's just not called out as a number.
I get the feeling you want to do them all before you vote on it.
No, I don't, actually. I think we should-
I guess I also didn't realize, because it didn't say vote, I thought we were discussing to then put these on the website for people to review, like we've
No,
done.
we've always voted. We've always voted when we brought these and discussed them. I mean, you don't have to
Yeah,
vote for it.
no, I mean,
That's entirely up to you, but.
we need to raise fees, I'm
Sure.
not, I
I
know
mean-
a couple years ago when it was, clubs went from 0 to a fee.
Yep, so the historical fee increases are the last page there.
People, like, the students didn't know, and it was like a pretty, and I think there are a lot of students who pay for a lot of this themselves, like, they pay their own parking, they pay their own club fee, like, they're working to pay these fees on top of everything else, and so I think we just have to be mindful of some of this. Pembroke doesn't have a lot of sidewalks, kids don't have an easy access to walk
And
to the school. So I have a hard time jumping this much, but I also really want to consider an overall cap. And it can be whatever number makes sense, $1,200, if that's what makes sense. I do think that should be,
So I don't want to, but I don't want to set a cap on the fly. right? So what I'd rather
that's-
do is
that's why
let's
I feel
get
like-
through it,
We need to have a discussion.
right? I'm happy to bring it in our next meeting with the possibility of adding a family cap. Those two things absolutely can be split. But I don't want to add the cap. The worst thing we can do is set policy on the fly because it's going to set. I want to understand what the downstream ramifications are of everything. I think the math pretty quickly says $1,200 would fully cover you anyway, but I'd rather know that and understand it than make policy on the fly. So can I get a motion to approve the transportation fee schedule as presented at $300 an individual and $500 for a family cap?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katrina and seconded by David.
Can I make a different motion? Or
Sure. No,
propose-
yeah,
I would-
100%.
I would propose not the 500 and have it be 450.
Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion.
Yeah.
So we have a motion, the first motion, we'll take them in order, at 500. You have a second motion at 450. If you're going to vote for the 450, you would vote no on the 500. You would vote yes on the 450. If you're going to vote for the 500, you vote for the 500. If the 500 carries, we want to go to the 450.
But didn't we just say, if, again, just assuming we did the early discount of $50, that'd get us to 450?
Yeah, but this isn't an early discount. This is actually reducing the
Right,
entire
that's what I'm
thing
saying, so it's,
by 50. It's worse. So
Allison, would you object to that?
To which one?
If they did the early discount on the 500, getting it down to 450?
But the early discount is for the individual also. So it would, the individual would go to 250 and the family would go to 450.
no, so the motion, that's not what the motion is. The motion
Yeah.
is 300 to 450, right? Just to be really clear. And that is not the $2,000 that we talked about, right? The $2,000 we talked about was just the $50 early discount on the family cap as opposed to a $30 early discount on the family cap.
Right. Just, again, the optics, I'm not sure if I'm doing this like out of order. I have no problem leaving the 300 with the early discount fee of $30. The $500, I would do a $50 early discount that gets us to 450.
No, I understand, so that would have to be a third motion.
That'd be a third one, that's what I'm saying, I'm not sure how.
So
we-
here's,
So the early discount is for individual and family.
And David is proposing to have them be two separate amounts.
right, David's
Right.
talking about it being $30 on the individual and $50 for the family. It's a 10% discount is what it is.
How much more work does this create for you, Erin?
Oh, I don't process the transportation fees.
Okay, who does that?
For Lori, the reality is
Who
Lori's
does
gonna, Lori would have to, here's the problem. The ultimate problem there is Lori would have to track as the family numbers come in, and there would be additional tracking.
That
I mean,
seems-
there would.
There's also a piece to this that we don't discuss when we talk about the fee, but we have in the past 4 years offered families to pay the fee online with a credit card. There is a fee associated with your payment online with a credit card. We eat the fee. We do
Yep.
not charge the fee to the family. So I
The
would be
town
hesitant.
does, because I had to pay that.
I
I
know,
know, but
For
we
the dog
don't.
licenses.
So I would be hesitant to be playing around with the caps, the
Early
early
discount fees?
discount pieces.
It seems complicated.
Yeah, my
Mildly complicated.
my strong recommendation would be, given where we are, given how low our family cap is and everything else, to vote it as presented. That's my recommendation to all of you, having seen this time and time again, because then next year, when we go from 450 to 600, because everyone else is at 700 and 750, it's going to be, well, that's a really big leap. Like, eventually, we got to take the medicine and get to a decent place. I think, given that, David, we would then have to turn around and start charging the credit card fee,
Right.
which is no different than what you're talking about, actually, right? You would eat away the amount would be paid the same. This is actually simpler, I think, ultimately for families, because all of a sudden now there's not an extra fee to a credit card, a service fee
Yeah.
being attached.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
think
the discussion.
No, I do
just,
too. It's
you
reasonable
know,
to get there, right? So on the first motion, to approve the transportation fee as presented at $300 an individual and $500 a family. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Me, no.
Abstain? So it's 3-1, Natalie, the motion carries.
Do we vote on the second motion?
We don't, because that motion carried.
Right.
There's no need to vote on the second motion.
Make sure.
Well, that was exciting. Let's see what athletics brings.
One quick question, sorry to
Sure.
make it go longer, but students can also fill out a hardship waiver if
Absolutely.
they are the
Yes,
ones
yes,
that,
yes,
yeah,
100%.
okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
And David, just as a point of order for when you're doing this next
Yeah.
year, the reason we didn't have to go to the second motion was
The
because
first
the
one
first one
passed.
already passed. There was nothing else left to vote
Right.
on at
Okay.
that point. And I took them in the order they were made, that's
Yeah.
all.
No, that's
Right.
fine, thank you.
Okay, athletics. So you can see again, similar setup, what we charge versus what neighboring communities charge. I will say athletics is like the wild, wild west. There's no concept or really plan on how it goes. It's very different community to community. Here in Pembroke, we currently charge $275 for individual. You can play however many sports you want at Pembroke High School for $275. You can play 1, you can play 2, you can play 3. We have a family cap of $435. Currently at PCMS, it's $50 a season or a $100 cap for a middle school athlete. We do offer a sport each season for students at the middle school, and we currently have a $50 premium fee for hockey and football, to the point of the fact that running those two programs in particular is much more costly than some of our other sports. When budgets had met last Monday, what they were proposing was an individual athletic fee of $300 and a family cap of $550. In addition, they were proposing increasing the football and hockey premium from $50 to $100. So those two items are spelled out down the bottom. Together, they generate $24,000.
Questions, thoughts?
Well, these ones I can take a little easier, because I think now if you have a child in sports, I don't care if it's tennis, swimming, football, you're paying something, whether it's rink fees, pool fees, and it's a bit of a choice. You know what I'm saying? The only feedback I do get every now and then, there's a football game this year, and a parent said to me, I'm paying X amount for my kid to play football, and he never plays. And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I think I understand the parent's logic in that, but I also,
So playing
no
in,
guarantees.
There's
It's
no
just, you know,
guarantee
Yeah,
you're gonna
and-
play.
Yeah.
you know, playing in 8 football games or practicing every day with the team, doing weightlifting with the team, traveling with the team and getting a uniform. As a parent that has kids that play multiple sports, youth sports and club sports, $275 is cheap if they never even touch the field during a game.
I'm saying, that's the only objection
Right,
I would
right.
make respectfully.
But I will again say, right, because, and I do think it's important that we benchmark ourselves with where we are. Our current $435 is the lowest of all surrounding towns, as well as a couple of dark communities. And again, for everyone out there, a dark community is a community in Massachusetts. It's socioeconomically and population-wise very similar to Pembroke, right? So it's the best like-for-like comparison we can come up with. If you look at the current structure, we are the lowest by a decent amount, anywhere from 15% to as much as 300% lower. Going to the 550 on the family cap and the 300, the 300, I think, gets us to probably the 75th percentile of the individual sports. On the family cap, we are still quite low, right? So, but again, we're keeping it about the same, right? So it's about 1.5 kids, well, that's a little bit more, I guess. It's about 1.63 kids.
Right, and
But-
a lot of these communities are going for operational overrides this year, and if they do not pass, they have reserved the right to go back to their fee structure,
Yep.
so.
Yeah.
The other thing to point out too, if you recall in the transportation fee, we talked about Hingham, the family cap would be almost double where we are. You know, Marshfield, the family cap is a little higher than where we would be. You know, some of these are, you know, Carver is substantially higher than where we are. Some of these organizations are simply making the dollars up in other places. So any questions on this total?
Does it make sense to, like, I don't know, how many athletes do we have that are just one season? Or do most?
So
play?
I think we've had this conversation before, and I think we want our kids to be involved in more than one thing, right? So there's a lot of kids that play a fall sport and then participate either in indoor track or outdoor track as a conditioning for their main
A lot.
sport. I would hate to have a per sport fee and lose that opportunity for kids. I think that number of kids is greater than we probably realize. You know, just looking at our indoor track numbers, there's 87 kids participated in indoor track this winter. A lot of those kids wouldn't have identified as track being their main sport, right? It's an opportunity to stay in shape for football or for lacrosse.
A lot of coaches actually encourage the athlete to join winter or spring track for the
Yeah.
conditioning purposes, right?
That makes sense. And
Other
how many
questions?
schools have, I know you mentioned before that we have, if the name is right, an athletic trainer, like somebody who's through the year. How many other schools have that?
So you have to have an athletic trainer.
You do have
but
to have
there's
that.
varying ways to
Okay.
do it, right? You can have somebody part-time that's just there after school. You can have somebody, you can charge kids for the additional strength and conditioning that we offer. I think the model, we've had a little bit of all kinds of models in the past 20 years. I think what we have now is pretty great. I know that trainer Josh, who was our trainer up until last year, had quite a following of high school athletes. But I do think for kids, it's making a connection, and it's really a trusted adult for them to talk about sports injury, nutrition,
Yeah.
and those kind of pieces.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot with safety in sports. So I just think that's one piece that I think sets us apart a little bit in that we have a full-time person. So, yeah.
And I'm just asking, but you guys aren't proposing a change for PCMS?
No.
No.
No. Brian and I had a conversation about that. We are low on the PCMS piece, but I think, that I would rather be giving you numbers. So PCMS, when you pay $50 to play volleyball in the spring, you get a uniform, you're riding the bus, and we're paying a ref. So it's not even break even at this point for us. But middle school, because our middle school is only 7-8, I think it's really important for kids to be connected in that building. Changing the fee by $20 isn't going to save our budget in that realm.
Candidly, too, it also becomes no different than the youth sports. It's a good feeder system, right? They get used to playing with that group of kids. They connect and bond with that group of kids. All of a sudden, those volleyball kids go out for the high school team, or the track kids go out for the track team. Whatever it is, you're more inclined to get involved. You're more inclined to move with your mates, right? To really kind of stick it out and stick with the team.
Yep.
The other thing I will say is athletics is the place where leaders begin to be born, right? And especially in this setting, and it can change kids' trajectory. It teaches work ethic, it teaches coming together, it teaches compromise, it teaches how to deal with some really hard emotions. It is, and it's a program that we all should be proud of. You've seen the success that we've talked about over the last year when we did the review of the athletics program. I also think these are still affordable, right? To your point, David, if you have an athlete, you've been paying fees for probably 15 years once the kid's in high school. I mean, since they were in preschool, right? And the first soccer mishmash, right, type of thing. No different than, candidly, what we've heard from the arts and band and some of the other things, right? It's where a lot of the leadership and what have you take shape.
I think I have 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Do the kids who are the middle schoolers that get the waiver to play onto the high school?
They play the high school fee.
They pay the high school
Yes.
fees? Okay. And then the hockey and football fee is outside of the family cap?
It's $100 on top of the
In
family cap.
additional of the family cap? Okay.
Right now
It-
it's 50, we're proposing 100.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, with the cost of ice time,
Yeah.
it is skyrocketed in
Right.
the last few years. It just has. It's, the amount that's charged for that is astronomical.
Well, the fact that we raised the bus fee like 150, I'm kind of surprised you guys aren't asking for $200, honestly. Because if you're willing to do that.
Well, it's 115, right? That's the change in the family cap.
No,
you're
I'm talking
the-
about the hockey fee.
the hockey
You're only
and
going up
football
50
fee.
bucks.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Yeah, we doubled it. I mean, we're trying to keep it kind of the small pieces that we talked about, but I mean,
Nice one.
you can add a different amount if you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know last year we chose not to increase, I believe, not increase the hockey fees. And I see Whitman Hanson has $200 additional for hockey. Hanover has $725 for hockey, if I'm looking at this
Yep,
right.
and football, yep.
So I actually would propose that we increase
Does it-
hockey.
It's not, like, the buses are all students that can take the bus. This is what? 30.
What,
59. There's 59 football players and 57 hockey players. Some of them overlap. So
I was
there's
just gonna say.
97 unique
And they have to
families.
pay it twice then,
Yes,
right?
they would have
So
to pay it
So
twice.
each sport
Yes.
is a fee.
No,
Yes.
no.
So if you play hockey
Because
and
you're at the
football,
family cap then.
No, but this is in addition to the family
Correct. So
cap.
if you just have one single athlete at Pembroke High School and they play football and hockey, you have to pay the 100 and
No,
100.
but that's not what, hold on, I think what Allison just asked is, I play football, and then in the winter I play
Play hockey.
hockey.
You have to pay 100 or 50 and 50 now.
Right,
Yes.
that's what
Yeah.
Allison was asking, so you
Oh.
would pay the fee. So, my family, right, so, you know, I'm a linebacker in the fall and I'm a right winger in the winter, right? I'm gonna meet the family cap of $550, just, you know, with me and one of my siblings, right? But then I'm gonna pay, in the proposed situation, $100 extra in the fall and $100 extra in the winter, because I'm playing
So you'd be paying
football and hockey.
$750.
Yes. That's correct. So before I make a motion, you guys had talked about wanting to potentially change the $100. Did you want to do that?
I would propose making 150.
That's what I was gonna say, yeah,
So
actually.
why don't I lead off with that, and then we can go from there.
And that's outside of the family.
It's outside the family
This
cap.
is
It's
So it
in
would
addition.
generate another $5,800.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, can I get a motion to approve the athletics fee at $300 an individual, $550 for a family cap, and a premium fee for hockey and football of $150 as amended?
so moved.
Second.
So motion by Katrina, seconded by Allison. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous, Natalie.
We did not recommend any changes to the facility usage fee structure. Obviously, that we don't garner a ton of money in rentals in our buildings because of our classifications, our categorization of groups, so we don't charge for, obviously, Pembroke Youth programs, Pembroke Adult Nonprofit, Pembroke Youth, there's a whole host of categories down the bottom. We use our spaces all the time, so there's very little out there for folks to be renting from us as far as gym space and turf space and whatnot. So the fee associated with those rentals is generally what it costs us to have the custodian in the building for that time, and there's no proposed increase to that moving forward.
Can I ask if the rec center has pulled anything away from us, or is it
So
more
the-
complimentary?
The rec center was instrumental for basketball for us, so instead of having, the freshman girls team traveling to North Pembroke Elementary School for practice, they were able to use some time at the community center. I did have a conversation with Lance. He did get some feedback from the community that having high school teams using the gym in after-school hours limits youth availability in the gym, so I think he's gonna look to potentially scale back a little bit on what he's offering us as support, but it's really complimentary, not in place of.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Co-curricular fees, so again, just showing you kind of where other communities are and what we're proposing. Our current fee is the first activity is free, and then it's $25 for each activity after that, with a family cap of $50. What Budget Sub is proposing is that the first activity is free, that each additional activity would be $50, and the family cap would be $100. We did talk a little bit about extending the fee to middle school clubs as well. Obviously, it would be difficult to quantify what that would look like, but there was some conversation about just feeing the high school population between athletics.
I will not support this unless there's an overall cap completely for all fees. So, because I think we got a lot of pushback from students themselves, because they tend to be the ones that pay this, and I definitely don't want the middle school to have to do this, so I'm gonna be a no for sure on this one. Unless we have, again, an overall cap.
Is this also something where they could fill out a hardship fee? So they could still do the club?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is there any particular requirements for that, or it's mostly just like, I can't pay this, will you help me?
They usually just talk to somebody, either
Okay.
Mark, Dave, Kristen. Donna Frades is the one at the high school that collects the fees. A lot of kids feel comfortable talking with her.
Great.
Yep.
I just wasn't sure what
There are
the
a couple kids on
criteria
payment
was.
plans. They pay like $5 a week. Like, it's not.
Okay, understood.
But this is also something, fees that I don't think it happens, but could prevent graduation. Like this is, like they can't get their cap and gown, they
You
can't go to
can't get
prom.
your cap and gown if you didn't pay for kindergarten when we paid for kindergarten, or if you owe lunch money, if you owe a book. You can get your diploma, but you can't walk at graduation if you owe fees
Yep,
in any way, shape, or form,
including these.
Yeah.
including these.
How do we currently advertise about the hardship forms?
I think it was part of the announcements that, it's on our transportation form. Brian has a conversation at each of the sports nights. I think it's actually on the announcements when you did the club fair in October.
One thought I have is like, and this may be something you all have already done, is having like posters or something with a QR code or something that, so that students are seeing it. Since we are increasing fees, I think maybe making that more visible so people are aware, because we can talk about it in these meetings, but obviously having a visual reminder can be helpful, and could be another way that we support families with the increase in fees.
Explain the difference between the $50 per activity and the $100 cap per year for all activities, including color guard, and the $100 fee per year for all activities. What's the difference between the two things? I don't either. That's why I'm asking you to explain it. So I think this is just not a cap. This is just
Right, so we have a
everybody
whole
gets
lot of kids that
$100.
just do one club at the high school, so they're not
Yeah.
paying anything. So if you were just, if there was no longer a free one, that's what the bottom, the $100 to do whatever you want, we don't have to track it, that's what this indicates.
So I do think, right, I mean, the co-curricular fees were talked about for a long time, over many, many years. And the idea here is you're feeding your athletes, right? You have a transportation fee, right? You have all these fees, but there's a lot of clubs that happen, and they're all stipended, that we have to pay a stipend for every one of those advisors, or almost every one of those advisors.
And plus,
So-
there's several clubs that travel, so the math club, mock trial, they all go places, that's, you know, obviously we are funding it through our budget, but you heard when Mark presented the high school budget that he was looking for an increase in extracurricular stipends, because we do have clubs at the high school where the advisor isn't stipended. We have a couple of clubs this year, like Unified Sports at the high school, that didn't run because there was no stipend for the club advisor, so,
So this is a real expense for us. I mean, that's why,
Yeah,
that's
and
why it's there.
and it's new, it's a new fee too. So
It is.
this has only been, this is only our third
Third
year
year.
of doing it, so
Yeah.
I'm still gonna vote no, because
That's
I
okay.
think that it's unfair to raise this fee after.
I would want the first activity to be free, because I don't want that to prevent kids from signing up for at least one club and getting the exposure. But I am okay with the other fees being increased after that, but definitely I would like the first activity to be free.
which is what budget sub was recommending, was keep the first activity
Yep.
free and then it's $50.
That's what the
Yep.
first scenario
Yep.
is down
Yep.
here.
Okay, sounds good.
So, take these in order.
Can we just talk about not including the middle school? Because I'm gonna vote no matter what, but I would really think that this should not include the middle school.
So the club offering at the middle school is as abundant as it is at the high school.
Well, I
right?
know, but
And so
like, if you're
we're
gonna have-
charging $50 for you to play middle school volleyball or basketball or track and field or cross country. And then there's a whole group of kids that are doing drama or art club and they're not paying anything. So I think the idea of extending it to the middle school was to make it a little bit more cohesive, that, you know, we were charging for after-school activities, whether it's a sport or a club at
So,
the middle school.
like, I mean, does that include like homework club, like at the middle school? I don't know, I mean, I feel that it's, I don't know, we want kids to kind of branch out, try new things, and if we're telling them you're gonna have to pay for it, especially middle school kids who can't work, I mean, they don't have jobs to pay for this, like the way high schoolers at some point can, so, I don't know. I think it's an unfair fee, especially at the middle school.
Okay. Other discussion?
Is there, I wonder about a third way of having it be smaller amount for middle school and higher for high school?
I mean, you could go with the $25 that we
Oh,
have in high
yeah.
school at the middle school.
I do think like that some of this is conceptual, right? You can do that. I mean,
Yeah.
we absolutely could do it. A stipend is a stipend is a stipend, right? A cost is a cost is a cost.
Yeah.
And the reality is, even at a high school level, most families pay these, right? Again, we've said it multiple times, there are hardship waivers, there are all of those other things that are ultimately out there. But whether it's a middle school club, whether it's middle school chess club or high school chess club, there's an advisor. And that advisor, most of them, not to your point, not all of them, are stipended, right? The other issue is, to the point that you just made, there were clubs that kids wanted to run
That
and the
couldn't.
funds weren't there because we couldn't pay a stipend. So this at least increases the amount of money by about $6,000. It may actually mean one or two additional clubs run. There's one or two additional sort of possibilities, for kids that are out there. Like, I wish we didn't have to charge any of these things. But the one thing that you see when you look through the admin budget and you look through the historic funding is the percentage increase of Chapter 70 funding. 2011 was a wild, just a wild outlier at 4.32%, 0.54%, 1.02%, 0.68%, 0.62%. That's the increase on Chapter 70 funding. When you have inflation rates that are somewhere in the 6 to 8.5, 9%, and you're getting 1.18% of an increase, that means we are subsidizing it. And the only way to, because the alternative is don't offer as many things, right? So
We hate that
I
alternative.
know, I understand that, but there is an economics component to this, right? And what you're saying is it's a user fee, right? So if you're using the service, you're paying the fee. I don't know that $50 for the activity, with the first one, to your point, being free, is that usurious, whether it's at a middle school level or at a high school level. But we all approach this philosophically. Ironically, I argued vehemently against all fees for a long time. I can't believe I'm sitting here with this argument right now, because I just thought it was wrong. I'm like, just put it in the tax base, right? But the reality is, these don't run if they're not funded.
Right.
But
And
we're
we saw
going
that.
from 0 to 50 at the
Yeah.
middle school.
Yep,
So
we
just
are.
pointing that out.
No, we would be. Well, you're going from 0, it depends, right? If you're taking 2 clubs and it's $50, it's actually $25 a club, but because the first one's free.
I think the way I look at it is if you're involved in any kind of an after-school program outside of the school, it's gonna cost you some type of money. And I think $50, I don't know if they meet once a week, once a month, once a year.
Right, so
but
the
I think there's some kind of
expectation,
cost.
the expectation on how stipends are paid out are the same for middle school and high school. So like a level 1 teacher stipend means that the club meets at least for 40 hours, and it's 60 hours, and it's 80 hours. It doesn't delineate between middle school or high school. So the expectation of club meeting times are the same. So chess club would meet once a week, whether it's a middle school club or a high school club.
Is Unified considered a club?
Yes.
So we would have to charge the kids?
Yes.
And what about the kids in elementary school? They wouldn't have to pay, but the middle schoolers would?
Yes.
Yes, because the
not
unified
okay.
is supposed to be middle school. We didn't have enough kids, which is why we extended it to elementary students this year.
Yeah, it's a hard no. Sorry.
That's okay. That's totally fine. So can I get a motion to approve the $50 activity, $100 cap a year for all activities, including color guard, with the first club free as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katrina, seconded by David. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstain? It's 3-1, Natalie.
Good news is, we're not recommending an increase to the parking fee. Is there anything you guys want to talk about for parking?
But does the junior lot have a
There's
fee?
no junior lot.
There's a junior lot, just lying to you.
Junior lot.
It is the grass along, I don't care what anyone says, there's a junior lot.
I think that this is a fee I can see raising. It's
I
like-
do too.
It's like 30 cents a day.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Where in heaven's
We
name
need
do-
wine at these meetings, that's all I'm saying, at the fee meetings.
Where can you
picking
park
it apart.
anywhere for 30 cents a day?
I
And
would.
we can't
yeah.
charge for the not existent junior lot, right?
Because we don't plow it, no,
Yeah,
so we
no,
don't have
the-
responsibility.
I think we should charge $1,000 for the junior lot and
So
$50
moved,
for the
just
student.
kidding.
Kidding, it's
No,
okay.
but you see my logic here?
I do.
And
I do.
I think it should be $100. In fact, I don't
Okay.
remember what it was when I was here, but it might have been
Zero,
more.
we've never
No.
charged
No?
anything.
No.
Oh, maybe that
And
was
this is
college.
another one where
I
this
can't
is the
remember.
kids.
This is a new one, it's the
Already-
first 3 years.
Already paying gas, already having to pay now all these other fees. No.
but having a card, to me, it's more of a privilege than a right. There's
Or they
certain
pay, or they have to
expenses.
pay $500 to take a bus, so, no.
Well, I think I feel like if we're going to have a bus fee, then we should also have a parking fee that's like, I don't know, somewhat closer to each other.
But parking doesn't cost us money. the way
No,
the
but it
buses
does
do.
bring us money in a bad
Technically, it
budget
doesn't cost us stickers,
situation.
doesn't it? Don't we have to put a parking
We buy
sticker or a
placards.
placard on the car or something? It's probably $1 a piece or something huge, but, you
I think they
know.
do have to pay to replace it, right?
It's $5, I think.
No, but I just think if we're trying to get these, kids 16 and a half, 17, 18 as young adults, if they go away to college, there's going to be a parking fee, and it's not gonna be
It is.
$50
Yeah, but
for the
that's
semester.
that's not public education, though. This is kids getting to
That's
school
true.
to go to school. I don't, I-
So, David, I just want to be clear, both you and Katrina now brought this up. Do one of you want to make a motion to change this amount?
I would make a motion to change the amount, and I would kind of compromise, Katrina, I'd go $75.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so the motion that's been requested is to raise the parking fee from $50 to $75. Can I get a motion to approve a change in the parking fee from $50 to $75?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Motion by David, seconded by Katrina. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to have it as proposed.
Okay, I'll do that next.
Okay.
So can I get a motion to accept the parking fee at, well, I won't take the motion. Let me vote on this
Yeah,
first and
that's
then we'll go, okay? So the motion on the table is a $75 per year fee, up from $50. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No,
Abstain? It's 3-1, Natalie.
I do want to mention, I really appreciate, Allison, you sticking with,
Yes,
100%.
I do appreciate you pushing back. I think it's good to have that
And
discussion.
we'll let all students know if they have a concern on the parking fee that they should email Katrina Delaney.
Yep,
So
please.
the
I
other-
need more
The other
emails.
part of this is I honestly am a little frustrated that this says discussion for fees and not an approval, because I honestly had no idea we were actually voting on this tonight. I think it's really unfair to put this all out without the public seeing any of this.
So we do this every year, right?
I know,
This
but
is
I
not-
Worded the
this-
same way.
the-
I've never worded it
I'll
different.
be on.
So this is only my second time doing this.
No,
so
I got you, right? Point taken, right? I mean, point taken, but I mean, we had this out on the agenda, for at least 48 hours in advance that we were having the discussion, as well as going through the entire admin presented budget, and there's 4 people sitting in the audience. So I don't know that it was a hotbed of activity. We've done it the same way every year for
And there was
a
a
long
lot
time.
of pushback, a lot from students with the $25. And that was before I was on. But the kids,
And,
I mean,
and again, right, I'm happy to talk to
because
anybody
they
about it also,
weren't, they
but
didn't have a
but-
chance, they didn't know. And I agree, this
Right, so
isn't
just to
public
clarify,
information.
a lot of pushback, to quantify what that means. So students were not clued into the conversation when it was happening in April of that year. It was when they went to pay for their club fees in October that they were aware for the first time that there was a fee.
Yeah.
Obviously, anything that's voted on tonight gets circulated openly. Mark can add to the announcements that we've increased the fees so that students are well aware ahead of needing to pay in October that there's an increase to the fees.
But the fact that it's a discussion and not a vote on the agenda, we worded it the same way for a long, long time. We've handled the fees the same way. There's always a fee discussion, and at the end of the discussion, there's a vote. Every single year, it has been like that. It's a point taken, but I just want to be super clear. There wasn't some sleight of hand here.
No, I'm
right?
not saying there
It's-
was. I
it's
mean,
just
it's
not
just,
what happened.
I'm used to it saying, second read and approval and, whatnot. So having it be
Yeah,
a.
it's not a policy.
Well, no, I understand that, but none of this is public information until presented. So the public had no chance other than coming tonight to know that they're going to be spending a couple
I shared it at
$100.
Budget Sub, so it was definitely, the documents were at Budget Sub as well.
But I thought you guys discussed the fees.
We did, but I
No, we
did
did.
bring
So
slides with me.
have that been updated to the website though? Has anybody other than, been able to see this?
So I don't share on the website until I share it in this committee, but if anyone were at the budget subcommittee meeting last Monday, they would have heard the conversation associated with it. And generally, if people are interested in the documents, they reach out to me and ask for a copy of the documents. I've supplied them in the past.
Okay. I just think this is bait and switch a little bit, I guess, but
So I'm going to respectfully disagree.
No, I know.
Because that's unfair. So I don't think it's bait and switch at all. I think it's historical precedent for literally at least 15 years that I'm aware of. So it can't be bait and switch when you have that kind of historical precedent. I get that you had a different expectation, but I take umbrage to the bait and switch comment.
Right,
I
so
think
last
it's
year, we didn't
unfair.
take any votes on fees because nobody made any motions to increase any fee. So there was no voting that happened last time. The warrants were the same
but I
discussion.
remember last year, Patrick wasn't at that meeting. He wanted to bring it up again, and we were,
We didn't.
And you guys
I-
chose not to.
no, I don't think, we were told we couldn't.
No, so let me be clear.
Am I wrong on that?
So, no, hold on, no, this is a good point of learning, right? Because and it's important, right, is this committee moves forward, right? This is really important. There's a couple of ways that you can bring something back. If there was no vote taken at all, it's fair game, so long as the chair will put it
They voted
on
not
the
to
agenda,
raise
right?
fees.
You know, so if you voted not to raise fees, then there can be a motion to reconsider in which a member of the prevailing side needs to bring it up. You vote, and if the majority of the committee says, yes, we want to reconsider that vote, you can do it. I do remember asking about it. It was clear that you guys had all kind of voted one way, and that's fine, right? We move on. I moved on at that point. I didn't push it, and I wasn't there, so I couldn't raise a motion to reconsider. But there are ways to bring these things up again. I just want to be really clear about that, because it's important to know as the committee moves forward.
Yeah, so that's where I guess I just don't remember if we voted to not vote, or like I think
I
we
can
just,
look at the minutes.
I think there was literally just no motions made. So
Yeah, and
it
then at
just-
which point, if it was that burning of an issue for me, God knows, we all know I'm not a wallflower, I would have pushed to have it added back to the agenda. You know, there's a point too that you got to respect the will of the committee.
No, I'm not arguing that. I'm just
moved
saying,
forward.
to me, the wording, if I'm not aware, then I don't know. I mean,
Maybe-
this is only my second time doing this, so.
I think it's a good point. I mean, I wonder if in the future we just word it differently and we take note that it could be confusing and we include the note. I know it's been done that way in the past. I just wonder if maybe
Sure, I
next
can
time we do
highlight things
it.
as action items, and then you know that a vote could potentially be taken.
Love
So
it.
that's-
That
And
sounds
again,
good.
hence the point taken, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, I get it, right? I really
Yeah.
do.
Understood.
So the
Guys, there's
preschool
one
fee.
more fee, so don't lose steam yet.
Oh, goodness.
So we have two different preschool options here in Pembroke. We have a 5-day, full-day program that we currently charge $5,500 for, and then we have the 4-day, half-day program, which is a supplement to our integrated preschool. That preschool meets Monday through Thursday, and your student, if you're a typically developing peer, is either an AM peer or a PM peer, depending upon the program. Those are the fees that we're currently charging. I gave you a couple of comps in there. The recommendation is to increase the 4-day, half-day fee to $2,700 and the 5-day, full-day fee to $6,500. I just want to clarify that even at $6,500, this program is not break even. So we are still supplementing it with some of our budget dollars. When we first rolled out the 5-day, full-day program, maybe 8 years ago, it was self-sufficient, but staffing costs have increased over the past decade, and our tuition does not keep up with that same rate, so.
Do they count towards Chapter 70?
No, so the full-day preschool students do not, nor do the half-day peers, just the half-days, or just the special education students in the integrated preschool are in the Chapter 70 formula.
Mm-hmm. And this is for the full year?
This is for the full year.
Okay.
And do they don't quite go the 180 days, right?
No, they start 6 days later and end 10 days earlier, I think. I don't know. They're like 165
And
days or
I don't
so.
know, because I haven't had a preschooler here, but does this compare at all to like private preschools?
Private preschools are 3 times as much.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is much cheaper. Okay.
Yeah.
that's
Much
what I was
cheaper.
checking. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? So can I get a motion to accept and approve the preschool fee as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by David, seconded by Katrina. Is there any further discussion?
What if you have 2 kids? Is it the same amount?
So there's a sibling discount for the 4-day, half-day program. There's not a sibling discount for the 5-day, full-day program,
Is there?
even if you have twins.
Which is me.
But it's so much less expensive than sending your kid to
I
daycare.
know it is. I've done it. I've done it all.
Is there a reason why there's a sibling discount for the for the 4-day, but not the 5-day? Or is
Because
it
that program is an integrated preschool and we need peers. The full day is really, we have IEP slots in that classroom, but those are the last ones we fill, right? So it's really a mostly typically, there's 15 peers in that room that
I
stay for
see.
the full day.
Okay, got it.
So any other discussion? So the motion on the table is to accept and approve the preschool fees as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? It's unanimous, not aye. And the fee discussion's closed out for 2025.
We made it.
We made it. I think the only discussion that I can't stand more is reorganization. They're my two least
don't have
favorite
to do that.
things.
Okay.
That was exciting. So next up, we have the FY26 admin recommended budget. You have these slides in your packet as well. A little bit of how we're going to go through this. You can stop me as I go. You can wait till the end and ask 100 questions at a time, however you want to do it. I'm going to give you some historical budget information, remind you where we were for maintenance of effort back in November of 2024 when I presented that, talk to you about what the administrative recommended budget is with our priorities, and then the timeline and next steps associated with that budget proposal. So just taking a quick look at a historical funding picture here. To Patrick's point, there are dismal increases to Chapter 70 year over year. I think one of the things that we talk a little bit about, not as much as we used to, but still a little, is about what portion of the town budget does the school represent. So you can see with the budget recommendation that Bill Chouinard made with our $40,005,050 versus the $80.6 million of the town side, that represents about 49.5% of the budget. But it's also important to point out that we do not budget for health insurance or pension liability on the school side of the budget. So obviously, our employees are entitled to health insurance, and we have a few employees that pay into the Plymouth County retirement system, so that is budgeted on the town side. So this is just dollar for dollar, not including those shared benefits. There's a bigger increase in Chapter 70 than we've had in years past, so that's optimistic. It's almost twice as much as it was in 2019. Really trying to sell it, Patrick.
Yeah, it's not going to work,
Okay.
but okay.
Tried my best. I wanted to just show there also the enrollment numbers for the Chapter 70 formula. I feel like we show enrollment a whole bunch of different times over the course of the school year, whether it's our October 1 enrollment, what we're projecting. The numbers that are associated with the Chapter 70 formula are slightly different than the number of students that are actually here in Pembroke Public Schools. That's the information we report on 10-1. But for the Chapter 70 formula, they take a fraction of a student that's at a vocational school or half of a preschooler and that kind of stuff. So there's some adjustments that happen to those numbers. I know there's some people out there that are trying to tie everything back to a specific number, and it does move a little bit. Another data point that we like to look at is our per pupil spending. So here on this slide, you can see on the left-hand side, it's per pupil spending for in-district students. Pembroke is the blue line, the state average is the orange line. So we are just under 18,000 for in-district students this year at 17,952. And then for the right-hand side, you have per pupil spending for all districts. The reason why I don't like to use that number is because if you have one or two special education out-of-district placements that are hundreds of thousands of dollars, it really warps your per pupil there. So I think it's important for us to be looking at what are we spending on the kids that are here in district where we're controlling the expenditure, and that is the number on the left-hand side. There's been a lot of questions in the past on how we spend our money versus how other communities spend their money. I want to point out that the per pupil expenditures that you see here are for fiscal year 23. We have obviously submitted our fiscal year 24 closeout report, but the state is still auditing them. So the per pupil expenditures are about a year and a half behind. So 23 is the most recent information that you can find there. As I said before, Pembroke's in-district per pupil expenditure is $17,795. You can see our neighboring communities there. We had a lot of conversation last year about what the admin line looks like and what our instructional leadership line looks like. We did change our instructional leadership line in our admin a little bit, so the next time I present this, you'll see those numbers go down a little bit next year, because we did account for the fact that our content supervisors do teach. So the portion of their salary associated with their teaching has now moved over to the teachers column. So that you'll see a little bit of adjustment there.
So hold on though, because this is a really important point. So our instructional leadership number is higher and our teaching number is lower because the content coordinators actually do teach a portion of the
Correct,
day.
right, so that'll be corrected in the fiscal year 24 closeout.
So that is
Or was
important for
corrected.
folks to understand when they're looking at this.
Some of the other places where you see some differences, obviously professional development, our dollar amount is lower, and that's because we really capitalize on grant funding for that type of expenditure. If you look at benefits, the variation between districts is often a function of what percentage the employee pay is. So here in Pembroke, it's 25% employee pay, 75% town pay. Some of these districts are a 50-50 split, some are a 60-40 split, so there's some variability there. Our operations number is a little low in relationship to some of the other communities around us, but our pupil service number is high. That really, I think, shows the commitment that you have all made to the social emotional well-being of our students by investing in social workers in all our buildings, school psychologists. We have a solid guidance group both at our middle school and our high school. So, in the appendix, I gave the description of what each of those categories are. I understand they're not necessarily easy to decipher what falls where. So
Erin,
yeah.
on the benefits cost, right? We're a 75-25 community,
Correct.
right? Which means the town pays 75, the employee pays 25. Do you have any indication of these other towns that we're comparing ourselves to, how many others have a 75-25 mix?
So it's about 50-50 here. So there's at least 4 communities that I know off the top of my head looking at our 50-50 split, and I know that there are some communities that are working towards a 60-40 split in their current round of negotiations.
So that's a minority, right?
As much fun as it is to look at how we spend in comparison to the people around us, it's better to look at how we spend in comparison to districts that are like us. So like I was discussing before, our DART districts. So these are communities that are socioeconomically and population-wise very similar to Pembroke. You can see there we fall in the bottom half of those communities in almost every single category here of what we're spending. But I think it is helpful for you all just to be able to benchmark kind of where we are at versus some of those other communities. Every time we look at this, I'm always interested in how many of our DART schools are regions. Dighton, Rehoboth, Freetown, Lakeville, Hampton, Wilbraham. It's interesting. You wouldn't necessarily think that that's a like community, but.
I don't see like Linfield and Wakefield being like communities either, to be honest with you, but Linfield's highly affluent. almost
Yeah,
to
maybe
the
there's
level of
portions of it, but socioeconomically, they rank great with us.
So our total expenditure, we're like in the bottom
Yeah,
bottom
the
three
half.
for
Yeah,
this
so there was
list.
a time when my first couple years here where we were 16th from the bottom.
We were
almost-
ninth. That was the
almost
worst.
all the time.
The worst we
which
ever
is-
was ninth from the bottom.
Which means two things, right? It means that we're spending less than everybody else, but it also means we're doing great things with the money that we're spending.
Yeah.
As far as the program that we're able to offer, we are definitely in the bottom third of spenders. I don't know the number right off the top of my head, but I can send that out to you guys. We have moved up a little bit from 9th or 16th from the bottom of 351 communities to the bottom 50, but still, we are doing a lot with the dollars that we have here in the district, and that's a testament to all of the work that our teachers and staff do across the district. Great things are happening at a low per pupil rate.
Yeah, I think that's important to mention, that the money is being spent well.
So in November of 2024, when I presented the FY26 maintenance of effort budget, we were just a little over $40.9 million. Through all of the budget presentations that we've had so far today, you did not hear anyone say anything was a required addition. So there were zero things that we had to add. In years past, there's been a special education teacher or a paraprofessional in need, but there was nothing identified as such. We've identified $415,500 as level one priorities. I will show that detail in a couple of minutes. We take a handful of adjustments each year to our budget in order to lower our deficit. The first one is the transportation revolving offset. Just like we were talking about earlier on the fee discussion, we do try to take the amount we raise in fees to offset the $1.5 million that the cost is on our local budget. So this year, that's a $100,000 revolving fund offset. We have been fortunate enough to do special education tuition pre-buy here in the district. This is, I think, our 6th year in a row. What that means is that we are able to purchase with this year's dollars tuition for next year's students. And so that's one of the only things in municipal finance that you can prepay for. So you can prepay for a quarter of a year of a private placement, or you can pay for a whole year of a collaborative placement. So we really do capitalize on that when we're doing our year-end purchasing.
So this isn't us pulling the lever on that right now, right? That's not what this shows.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is us continuing with our practice.
Okay.
We also have a item on the capital warrant to move about $100,000 of curricular materials from our operating budget to the capital budget for the town, similar to what we did last year with the Envision math purchase. So those adjustments are $800,000, which brings us to $40,525,597. That is a budget gap of just under $2 million from where we are today. We have 5 enrollment reductions that I'll go through on slide 11 that account for about a $459,000 reduction. And then we have some increases. So obviously I have put in here as a placeholder the additional revenues from the proposed fee increases. I will go in and adjust that with the 2 additional fee increases that you all voted on tonight. There's an increase in Chapter 70 of $182,000. That's actually $75 a student. That's a typo
I was
there.
going to ask about that.
Yep. And then the increase in the town contribution to our budget is just over $1.2 million. So with all that being said and done, at the time of printing this slide, we were short $6,547, but you have made up that difference in those 2 additional fees that you raised tonight.
So when did the town come in with more money? Like when did that?
So that's still the number that Bill Chenard's had since his February 15th budget presentation.
So I think you're thinking it was about $900,000,
Yeah.
right? Which was the original piece.
So it's, yeah, so
What was the number he had bought?
So his number is $40,005,050, which is what this budget ties to.
Are you okay?
I guess I don't understand how.
This math is a bit of a funny way to do it. You kind of have
Yeah.
to jump into the spreadsheet to see it. But our total of everything that we are raising in fees, adding for level 1 priorities, and cutting for reductions totals $40,005,050.
Which is what the balanced budget number is.
Correct.
So I do have a question though, before we get to priorities. So what this tells us is the budget is in balance at the $40,005,050. But the one concern that I have is, you know, and I say this, right, that the PTA has put all their proposals out on their Facebook page and on their website. The proposals that the teachers have made so far, which is a 5% increase per year for teacher salaries, and then when you add in, you know, just steps, not even steps and lanes, but steps for the first 12 years, it's really an 888. 22% for paraprofessionals per year, and extensive increases at the cafeteria number. If I did my math right, that comes out to somewhere around $2.3 to $2.5 million. To get back to this number, how many teaching positions would that end up being?
It would be 25 to 30.
That we would have to, right? So I just, it is important to understand, right, that we are negotiating and some of what's being asked. And when you do the same comparisons, a lot of the similar towns, albeit not the exact same towns, you know, our teachers do okay, right? They're either the highest paid or the second highest paid when you look at the comparative towns, with one exception. And it's important to point out, right, because we do have to figure this piece out and remedy this piece also. Those teachers that have gone through the 12 years, so they're with us years 13 on, are actually in the lower part of that comparative, right? And so I do think as we're going through negotiations next year, right, we got to think about all of those things and understanding what can and can't be afforded. When you looked at, and we talked a little bit through other districts around the Commonwealth, right, there's a huge article in the Globe. You have Milton with a $9.5 million deficit. North Andover's talking about laying off 40 roles. Newton is having a problem. Duxbury just voted down in override. Hanover voted down in override and laid off a bunch of people last year, and continues to try and figure out where we are. we're about to talk about admin level 1 priorities of investing back, but there's no way that we could absorb millions of additional dollars. And it's something that we have to be acutely aware of as we go through this process.
And Allison, to your point, I just wanted to bring you back to the historical funding page. The math is a little bit easier to see there. So our current budget of $38,580,000 is made up of $14.2 million in Chapter 70 and $24.3 million from the town. The budget of $40,005,050 is just under $14.5 million from Chapter 70 and $25.5 from the town. So that's the increase between those two is about $1.2 million. That number that's on that next slide. So back to the admin recommended priorities. So we heard about a lot of great ideas and goals through I think you guys got 2, 4, almost 11 different budget presentations over the past 3 months. Obviously, we got together as an administrative team and tried to rank those things that we would love to have them all. We understand that that is not feasible. So we did come up with what we are identifying as level 1 priorities. So the first 2 are associated with that social emotional behavioral program at Hobbamock. So adding the teacher and the RBT, that would be the base level staffing for year 1. When that program was presented during the elementary budget, and Jess also talked about it during the student services budget, there was a piece to that was social worker as well as some BCBA support. Obviously, we would love to have all of that, but we understand that we can start the program with this here. We talked about the increase in the Pathways Coordinator position going from 0.6 to full-time at the high school, but still wanting to maintain the business offerings for our students. That is a really strong pathway at Pembroke High School, and that would necessitate the need to add a 0.4 business teacher so that we can continue all those offerings. So that is also a level 1 priority for us. We are asking for a 1.0 board certified behavior analyst to share across all 5 buildings. Just talked extensively about our current model. We do contract with PAC for those services. This would in addition to those contracted hours, we would then bring a full-time staff member on board here in the district. We have talked for the past 4 years about a coordinator of behavioral health and counseling. The name shifts a little depending on the year, but this year we're calling it a coordinator of counseling. We are fortunate enough to have a behavioral health grant that could support paying half of that salary moving forward. So that grant is guaranteed for next year. Our understanding is that for the foreseeable future we will be getting it. We've been awarded the past year for that, so we are comfortable adding that position moving forward with half of it being grant funded. Mike Tinker talked extensively about moving some of our technology services to managed services. This is really outsourcing some of the work that we do here in a way that makes more sense, efficiency, and cost effectively. We have talked a lot about supports for students. So 3 years ago, we added a reading specialist at each of our elementary schools. We would like to get to the model where we have a math interventionist at each of our elementary schools, but we understand that's a big ask in 1 year. So we are asking just to add 1 that's shared across the 3 schools. And I know that Mark asked for, I think, $30,000 of an increase in extracurriculars, but we plugged in 5 for him.
It's a step, Mark. It's a step.
It's 2 to 3 stipends, depending upon what they are. So those level 1 admin priorities total $415,500. With that being said, there is a whole host of other things that were presented that we were not able to really rationalize them as level 1s. I do want to point out that first one. So the 1.0 elementary world language position is something that we have been kind of dancing around for several years now at this table. It's never made it to a level 1 priority. We were pretty close this year. But there are a couple of things on our level 1 admin priority list that we are submitting as opportunities for those pothole grants that the Senator Fernandez and Representative Lenatra and Squeezy talked to us about. So I did, in your packet, you have just the letter that I plan to send to them that outlines. We would love if they would pick up the funding for that 1.0 teacher and RBT at Hobbamock for the startup of that program, understanding that after the first year, the expectation is that program will be self-funding, whether through cost avoidance of not needing to send students out of districts or even the opportunity to tuition in students or bring a student back. So
But this is an addition.
So if they were to pick up, if that item were to be picked up as a pothole grant, we could look at what's listed in level 2 and 3 and add something to the
Okay.
Okay, so it's in this currently. So this money is currently,
Those two,
So
right? So
those
if,
two.
if the pothole grant comes through, we could look at the list of level 2 and level 3 and potentially reinvest those dollars somewhere else in the budget.
Okay.
would there be time to do that?
It's a posting, right? So the only thing that you're tied by is your requirement to notice somebody if you're cutting their position, and that's June 15th. My understanding is that those pothole grants have a June, July kind of timeline associated with award letters on them, so we would absolutely have time to post and fill if we were fortunate enough to get that.
Aaron, on the Chromebooks on the level 2, they're pretty far down, but in the secondary laptops, could that be added to a capital ask in the future?
So they
year?
can be. So I put the Chromebooks on as a pothole, because why not,
Yeah,
right?
why not?
Sounds like
Yeah.
it's a one-time thing, really. And if we have some year-end funds available, so obviously we have some discretionary money in our budget, whether it's for textbooks or supplies. At the end of the year, there is generally about $100,000 or so left in various lines. If we can couple that together and make some of those tech purchases, we would do that. But if we're not able to do that, we would put it on next year for capital.
It's important, especially for teachers, as well as for kids. I mean, you gotta give teachers the right equipment, the right tools to do the job, right?
Right, so there are the laptops in the district are between 3 and 4 years old. So they're not ancient, but they're obviously not brand new.
Okay.
I would love to see the elementary world language happen.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to talk about that isn't necessarily in here is that Jess and I are submitting through the opioid settlement fund for a 1.0 health teacher as well. So there's a grant application for that process at the town level. The hope is that we are awarded that grant, and I think we know a few people on the board that vote, so that would be great. But then that would give us a 4th specialist rotation at the elementary level for the entire year. So right now it's art, music, and PE students have, and then they have 1 term of stream. This would give them a term of stream, a term of world language, and a term of health. So it keeps the 4 rotations going, which we think would be helpful for students.
Did you have a question, Katrina?
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask, and this may not be a place that you have gotten to in terms of talking about the budget for the priorities, but if there were to be one on this list, when we're thinking about the level 2 and 3, are there any that come to the top in the discussions that you've had?
Sure, so elementary world language is at the top for us. Going back and adding in the social worker, additional social worker piece that could go with that behavioral program is obviously something we would be looking at. Obviously, the more behaviorists we can get in the district, the more support that is for teachers, but you really want to be thoughtful about how you're building that out, and that, you know, you want to be able to do it in a way that is meaningful for students and for staff. And so necessarily staffing it with 5, 1 per building on the front end doesn't necessarily build capacity with our own staff. So really kind of thinking about that. So if there were a windfall of dollars, I would assume we'd go back to some of that BCBA and behaviorist conversation and what we could additionally support teachers with.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So just a couple of questions, right? I've heard a couple of times grant funding in staffing, right?
Love
Yeah, it scares me.
I know.
Grant funding's not forever, and staffing is an in perpetuity
Correct.
expense.
It
So-
is and it isn't, right? So that the health teacher rotation, there's $1.7 million in opioid settlement funds, I think is the dollar amount. So there's a several years that we could go for the health teacher if we got it and found it to be useful. We haven't had a health teacher in
I remember.
12
Yeah,
years
it's been a long time.
here in the district.
I remember.
So obviously, you know, we have really leaned on our PE staff to be PE and wellness at both the elementary level, middle, and high school level. So definitely having some exposure to what true health curriculum looks like gives us the opportunity to build some of that into the wellness program as well, if over time we have to phase out that program. The coordinator of counseling is something that we need to get to, and we can't get to it this year if we're going to fully fund it from here. But moving into year 2, 3, or even 4 of that position, we would absolutely need to find the dollars in here. It's not something I see going away. It went away in 2017, and we've been trying for 8 years to get it
I
back.
remember. But I think, I just want to point that out, right? Because it's just, those are funds that you're going to be looking for, because grants go away and the salaries stay, and that's just something we've got to be acutely aware. Always makes me nervous.
Right, so with the
doing
health
that,
teacher
that's
in
all.
particular, if elementary enrollment continues to decline, then that the specialist rotation wouldn't need to be 4, really. If
But I also don't
elementary
want to bring
population
somebody on and lay
increases.
them off in a
Correct.
year or two. I mean, that's not fair either.
Elementary, if it increases, then the funds from Chapter 70 would backfill the
Yeah.
ability to pay for that.
Just one more comment that I'll make. I believe wholeheartedly in the board certified behavioral analyst and in the social emotional components of what we have to do for kids. The needs of kids, I will say it again, in 2025, even what they were in 2017 or 2012, is remarkably different, right? So having that support structure around kids in our schools is really important. But I also think we got to be careful of balance, right?
Right.
You know, we've got math interventionists on here. We have some core sort of, reading, writing, arithmetic type of things in here. I just want to make sure that we're balancing those things too as we're thinking about this going forward.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're looking at the ones that are more social and emotional, they're, 3 on the list, but the other ones out, there's a lot more than just
Yeah.
those 3.
So the question I have is the plan to continue the elementary school with the rotation of the 1 pair switching for library?
If we didn't add any of this, yes.
What do
So right now, there's nothing in level 1 that would change the current makeup of the specialist rotation. So it would be the 3 specialists for all 3 terms and then 1 term of
Okay.
stream.
Because I would like to see that as a priority to add that back in, those 2 paras, so that I think one of the things I hear the most is how much the kids miss library and how much they want that. So I think that's not on here at all, to be able to bring that back. And I know last year that wasn't a, spacing on the word, it wasn't an enrollment reduction, that was a financial change at the end of the year without us having too much able to discuss it. So I personally would like to see that added back, and it could be, I understand on a level 2 or 3, but.
Sure, I can put that
I think-
above the elementary world language, so if any of the
think-
pothole grants come in, we could fund the library
I
specialist.
wouldn't put the library specialist over the elementary world language. I wouldn't even put it over the math interventionist, right? I think putting it on the list it's good to have on the list. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I wouldn't put it ahead of those things.
I just have a question, I guess, asking either administrators or even Mary Beth, like what are you hearing about that and how it's affecting staff or students? Have you gotten a ton of feedback about it?
It might be helpful to hear from the elementary
Yeah.
principals.
Yeah, I know it mostly
They're
is
living it.
elementary.
I think we've had mixed reviews on the situation. I think Hub-Mock had the stream para in our building, term 1, and kids loved it, right? They loved having stream, they loved having the opportunity there, library books to check out. Moving into term 2 and term 3, now that the person is not there, I honestly haven't heard a ton of negative feedback about the person not being there. We still have a system set up where students in K to 3 can check out books. We have a parent volunteer that comes in every Thursday. She's there from the start of school to the end of school, so we're lucky to have Mrs. Petty there, and she's able to check out books for kids. Kids are accessing the library when there's no staff in there, so we're using all those stream activities during indoor recess, or teachers can sign out the space and bring their classes down. So I don't think it's as inaccessible as some families might think it is. I do appreciate the work the stream paras do while they're there, but we would love to have a 4th rotation specialist. I think what that looks like could vary depending on the needs. And I think world language and a health rotation would just bring another layer of
Right.
access and
Yeah.
interest level to the students.
I would say that the majority of the feedback I've gotten is that it's missed, for sure. They still go in, they still do things, but it's definitely not the same. Especially when we did have Miss Nugent, just the digital citizenship that she was doing with them, like she wanted to do so much more that,
Yeah.
we can do in the classrooms and we are doing in our own way, but I would say that from feedback that I've gotten from parents and kids is that they do miss it. But I do think if we had a fourth that gave them opportunities, they wouldn't, I don't know if they would necessarily miss that or then also start to enjoy something else.
Right,
Bless
right.
you.
You know what I mean?
Right, I think our goal was to get to a fourth rotation, a more consistent
Would
fourth rotation.
one full-time world language get us there though?
It gets you a term of it, just like it gets you.
But
just
that's
like-
not a fourth rotation though.
That and the health teacher gets you to
At all
three
three
different
elementary
terms.
schools.
We would
So
have
one health teacher, one library stream para, and one elementary world language gets you to a fourth rotation.
Yeah.
If we don't get the health teacher and we get the world language teacher, it means 2 of the terms, 2 out of 3, you have a fourth
And
rotation.
what's the, I guess, the reasoning for having health and not library STEM? Like putting money towards that?
The only reason why is
grant.
because there's grant funding available for health. There's no grant funding out there for the stream
Yeah.
para that I'm aware.
So I wonder if we add the the library para,
I can
or stream
absolutely add it.
paras on there, and then
If there's funds, we can
have
come back
more
to the list.
a
and-
discussion,
yeah.
yeah, because I don't think putting one above another right now makes sense. I think
These
just
are
put it on
not
the
in
list.
ranked order here anyway.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I think it needs to be on the list.
Sure, yeah.
Because, you know, we did, I'm assuming, invest in money to put books and STEM activities, and, you know, I know some of library time was teaching typing and
Digital citizenship,
and just
yeah.
kind of what, yeah, all that. So I think watching kids not typing is a thing that, you know, like I think it would be nice to kind of have that, I don't know, have that space back and not just have it be indoor recess room, I guess, I don't know.
I will say, when I went to Bryanville Elementary, that the library class was my most favorite thing there, because I learned how to I learned how to, maybe it was Ask Jeeves, actually, but like those research skills were there, and I remember that like vividly, about learning how to look things up on the internet. And obviously that's just one person's experience, but I do think it's valuable to bring back to the discussion. So thank you for that feedback.
So the list of level 2 and 3 priorities continues on to the next page. So again, they're just really in order of the way the presentations came in.
Okay.
So again, if there were to be funds available, I think it would be important to bring you back a priority order for you guys to talk about, which this is not.
Yeah.
There are some enrollment reductions that we would be making going into fiscal year '26. Again, this is the first time in a long time that we're discussing really reinvesting those funds into supports and programming for our students. So one less 3rd grade teacher here at North, one less 6th grade teacher at Hamamock, a reduction of 2 staff at the middle school. It's 1 less science and 1 less social studies. That creates a split team, so there'll be 2 teachers at the high school that teach sections of 7th and 8th grade science and social studies. And then 1 district-wide ESL teacher. This position has been in our budget for 2 years, but it's been unfilled. We posted lots of times during the year with no applicants. It doesn't mean that the need isn't there, but in 2 years we haven't been able to fill it. So I do want to point out that here on this slide, for the first time in a long time, the dollars that I am accounting for in the reductions are the dollars associated with the staff. So usually I do it on an average salary basis. But because we know who these staff are, there's nobody that is being laid off for these reductions. We have retirements, we had some people resign or leave during the school year that there's currently a substitute in that role. So nobody is being laid off, but I did capture the actual dollars associated with that, which is why on the front page under adjustments, you don't see retirements. Usually there's a retirement adjustment, but it's here. It's built into that number instead. So that's kind of where we're at today. Obviously, I need to do some adjusting for the fee pieces that you guys talked about. Our next meeting is April 15th, which would be a joint budget meeting with the Select Board and Advisory. You all can decide whether you want to have your public hearing on 4/29 or 5/6, totally up to you. That's the point where you would vote on the budget to move it forward to town meeting, which is on 5/13/25, not last year. In your appendix, there's a whole bunch of information that it's hard to see in this format, so I did send it to you as spreadsheets as well. It's all of the backup data associated with kind of how we think about the budget.
That's great information, really well presented. Thank you I saw that you pulled up the town manager's presentation.
Yeah, I
to
felt like
make
Allison was a
sure-
little bit.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to meet with you, because
Yep, that's fine.
the numbers don't.
Right, but so just keep
Number.
in mind, right now, our budget is 38.5 million, next year our budget is 40 million, that's a $1.5 million difference. There's a $182,000 increase in chapter 70, the rest of it's coming from the town.
Yeah,
So,
no,
we
I
can go
did,
through it.
yeah, we'll just have to go through it.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't have the numbers.
No, I'm glad you checked. Okay, so subcommittee liaison updates. Ed Sub has been meeting.
So last meeting, I gave you for first read and approval, the PCMS new course proposals, as well as and by gave you, I mean link to, not actual printouts of, as well as the red line program of studies. So they're on tonight for a second read and approval.
And I didn't open it to see that, I'm assuming. We didn't make any changes.
You did
We
it.
did it.
No.
No, we did it. So can I get a motion to accept for second read and approval of the PCMS new course proposals?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katrina, seconded by Allison. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous, Natalie. Can I get a motion to accept for second read and approval the 2025-2026 PCMS program of studies?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Allison, seconded by Katrina. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous, Natalie. Under future meeting dates and topics for meeting, our next meeting's the 15th. We actually get a week off. It's the first one everyone's
There's a
had.
couple of things
Wow.
that you all have asked. So the select board and advisory would like to meet at 7 o'clock. I'm recommending that you still meet at 6:30, because there has been a request to have a conversation about the interscholastic athletic policy and what kind of transpired at policy sub. Brian Phillips will be joining us, so he can
But-
share with you as well.
Hold on, though, to be clear, I don't know that it's a discussion about what happened at policy sub. I think policy sub would bring forward what, if any, recommendation they had. right?
Correct, and if they
Okay.
didn't have a recommendation, then if somebody else wanted to move something forward, we'd have to talk
100%.
about.
Yeah, no. I think these guys have been doing a
Yep.
lot of work on that. They've been kind of doing a deep dive of research and sort of everything else.
In
so.
addition, I know that Ryan, though he's not here tonight, would love to have a conversation with you about graduation cords.
That's
It is
fine.
not something that Policy Sub has looked at, but I would love to give him the opportunity to
I
share
would
his
too.
thoughts as a
I
student
agree.
rep before his time on the committee
where
is
I
up.
agree.
That would be
And-
on the 15th as well?
Yeah,
Yep.
and hopefully the track team will be joining us. They do have a track meet that day, but Brian is hopeful that if he can get it started a few minutes early, that they can come over and be recognized for their
School
state title.
calendar.
The school calendar will be for a second read that day.
Are we meeting here on the 15th?
Yes.
Yes.
With the,
Yeah. Yeah.
Selectmen and the advisory, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's make sure it's in the right place.
Is there anything else that you guys wanted that we haven't talked about? We're kind of wrapping up the
I
session.
still,
but-
I guess, just the proposal for the strategic plan to
Yep.
get that.
Yeah, no.
I think for me, the timing of that is really when your new board is seated, because you're gonna need to be looking at dates over the summer and stuff, so
Yeah.
I can share with you the draft proposals that we have, so you to take a look, but I wouldn't recommend that you take action until you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, no, that's
whoever the
fine. I
five
just
are.
want to make sure that's still.
Yep.
And then, will we have a legal opinion on putting a placeholder? on
Yes, yes, so we're waiting for something from DOR, that's why I was checking for.
that? I just want to make
Yep.
sure that's before we do anything. Okay, so can I get a motion to enter executive session pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy related to collective bargaining as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the legal position of the school committee as declared by the chair?
So moved.
A second.
Motion by David, seconded by Allison by roll call vote. David?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Katrina?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. It's unanimous. We are in executive session.